The following presentation was recorded at the 2013 SouthEast LinuxFest in Charlotte, North Carolina. It is licensed under a Creative Commons license. For more information about the SouthEast LinuxFest, visit www.southeastlinuxfest.org. The SouthEast LinuxFest would like to thank the following diamond sponsors in 2013 for helping make these videos possible.
I guess we'll start. Is anyone really tired or hungover right now? This is kind of it. That's okay. There's both, because there's this thing in the States called 5-hour energy. I hadn't encountered this before, and I just took some, and it's really good. And I actually have some extra bottles if anyone would like one. I know it's probably really bad for you, right? But I thought if I'm gonna be the most excited one in the room, that I want at least 3 other people as excited as I am. So we had one guy here.
I don't know if you want me on that stuff.
No, I don't think you're the most vocal already, so none for you.
Thanks.
And who's he got? Got one more, spread it around a little bit. Who's really tired? Because, yeah, we'll give Star Wars, that deserves some by itself. So now, got at least 3 people. Try to keep the folks around you awake, with your energy that you have. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for Linux Professional Institute, and I don't get out much at all. So we've got so much going on, it was decided that I would come and do the presentation for SouthEast LinuxFest. We have, normally other more technical folks that come to these shows, but this presentation is not a technical presentation, thankfully, or I'd be dead. It's a presentation with a message about working and having a career and getting paid in Linux and open source, and that's okay. You're allowed to do that. If the software is free, it doesn't mean you have to work for free. Okay, there's really exciting, interesting, lucrative careers in Linux and open source, and the timing, from what I've seen and the people that I've talked to and the other people at our organization have talked to, the timing's never been better. So if you're here, if this is your first Linux conference, if you're already working, and maybe I should actually like to know that. Is anyone working in open source already and feeding yourself from it? You have actually shelter that's a job that's paying, and it's Linux and open source. Is anyone here doing that exclusively? No one that I see, or because you don't have to admit it either, but so maybe so. So I'm gonna say then that most of you are relatively new to Linux and open source, or new to the career aspect of it, perhaps. Yes? No one wants to really say. So it doesn't. The presentation will work in either case. Either you're brand new to Linux, you're even a student, you've been dabbling in it, you've been working with it. Either way, is that a question? That's a good start. So maybe you do that for free or for fun, but there's ways for work. So there's ways to do it for work and be paid. The idea here is if you're working already, there's things that you can do to move farther ahead or advance in Linux and open source. If you're new to it, there's tips here that should allow you to better prepare for that first interview and hopefully that first job in Linux and open source. We call it at LPI the coming wave of open source software. And we really feel that, as I said, the time has never been better. There's so much happening right now, and throw the terms around with big data and cloud technology and all of the Linux and open source software that's happening in that field. Really, it's creating a lot of momentum for us right now. And this is not meant to insult the intelligence of anyone here at a Linux conference. What is open source? Because it shouldn't necessarily be new to most of you, but at the same time, there's often people that are coming into these conferences, and everything is very new. So we'll just go over quickly what it is, and I'll probably do a hatchet job on the definition, and you can correct me afterwards, because I know it gets thrown around a lot. It refers to software that is released with the source code available and is under a license to ensure that those works are available going forward, and that the source code is available. And at the same time, it's meant to protect the rights of original authors. And there's lots, you could do an entire presentation probably just on what open source software is. This is what we call the pyramid, the tower. And we show this because people may not realize that the public internet is powered by Linux and open source software, right from the base server operating systems to how addresses are handled, the DNS, the database software, web server software, 72%, Apache and Nginx and others, 77% the programming languages, 71% open source software as for content management systems, and the browsers themselves, not as much. 54% are open source browsers. There's clearly quite a few people still running Internet Explorer on the desktop, obviously. That may or may not change. The real power is the internet. It's below the browser, as you're probably aware. Okay. Linux use is rising rapidly. We have the benefit, and maybe some of you have gone and looked at the Linux Foundation survey. They've been doing it each year for a number of years, so there's some trends starting to appear. Last year, 893 large enterprise administrators surveyed. I was actually warned not to give the impression that they only surveyed large system administrators, but it's the enterprise itself that was large, and I don't want to offend anyone with that, but I was warned to just be clear on what that meant. So it's large enterprise administrators, and there was several stats. You can see them there. I won't read them all, but the idea is that Linux use is growing rapidly in large enterprise, and that will continue. So the bottom 2 points, 75% have big data concerns, and they're planning on Linux solutions for those. And a lot of the main reason why Linux use is growing rapidly is 2/3 consider Linux to be more secure than other operating systems. Again, that's probably not new information. Linux is core to the cloud. So in the survey, maintaining or increasing Linux to support cloud, 74%. Agreed. And more so, enterprise is increasing the use of Linux in mission-critical workloads. Over the past 3 years, it's grown now, most recently, to 73%. I'm going to go through some of this is to set up the fact that there is demand, and when we get to there being an open source workforce, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the toolkit that's available for those going and pursuing a career in open source, and we'll talk a little bit about where LPI fits in and what we're currently doing. I actually expected about 5 or 10 people to the presentation, so I'm pleased to see that there's as many of you as you are, and I know that you may not all stay if you have stuff to do. I appreciate that. Those of you who are now finished your 5-hour energy, I can tell who you are. The open source workforce. Okay. So there's the IT workforce, as you know, working, living, breathing, information technology as your career. And simply put, the open source workforce is a subcategory of that. We want to really remind everyone that you're part of a cause. A Linux career means being part of a cause. And Linux is the largest, as it says, the largest collaborative development project in the history of computing. For me, I'm a non-technical person with a career in Linux and open source as well. I've been with LPI since 2005. Right? I've been the CFO since 2010. And I've talked to many technical people. I've talked to non-technical people. There's many career opportunities. But when I see the size of the Linux project itself, and I've been to other conferences where people have gone through the history of Linux and how Linus sent out that first email and it wasn't going to be a big thing and it turned out to be a big thing. And the same is what is happening, it happened for LPI, with certifying people in Linux open source. But I see this and I know that even a few years ago from the business side, there's no way you could have started a company or a startup or worked in the same way that you could now with all the Linux and open source tools available. I don't have to spend money on software licensing just to get a laptop up and running. I can use Google Apps for Business if I want. I can run a desktop with free software, and my resources, which are very scarce in the beginning if I'm starting a business, can be put to much better use to marketing, to getting yourself out there. So the size of the project still blows my mind. The highest demand for Linux pros seen in the enterprise with cloud and big data driving sysadmin hires. That shouldn't be a surprise. And the stats, I'm a numbers guy and I'm almost done with the stats, so sorry, thanks for hanging in there. 93% of employers plan to hire a Linux pro in the next 6 months. 90% of hiring managers say it's difficult to find Linux pros, so you're all hiding somewhere. Your hiring managers, for whatever reason, are having trouble finding you. And last year, an increase in Linux salaries was 9%. It's above industry average. 75% of Linux professionals have received a call from a recruiter in the last 6 months. We work with a lot of job organizations, career organizations, so we have access to these stats. More than a third, doesn't surprise me, more than a third of those plan to switch employers in the next 12 months. I don't know if anyone's here with their boss right now. Awkward if you are, but the idea is that Linux professionals are in demand. They're more in demand now, perhaps, than they have been in the past. Being in demand means you command more pay. I mean, it's pretty simple. That doesn't mean you have to switch jobs, but there's a third of you that likely will, because the demand is there. And when the demand is there, the opportunity is there. A Linux career means more coin. These are statistics that are available. We've summarized, here for you. Average pay increases for Linux pros more than double that of the average technology professional. And last year saw a 15% increase in bonus payouts. I'll mention we have a partner of ours, Odesk is their name. And we recently launched on our website a widget into the Odesk opportunities. So you could go today to the job widget and look up what jobs are currently available. And there's thousands there that Linux professionals can apply to. So that's been happening in the background for the past couple of months. They've been able to statistically, and this isn't public yet, I'm not even sure if I'm supposed to share it, but I guess I would be the one to give permission whether it could be shared or not. So I guess I can share it. The professionally certified Linux folks are making 25% more money than the non-certified, and they're in contracts 75% longer than their counterparts. We've always suspected that, and we've intuitively known that, and now the statistics are proving itself out. It can be seen. Linux use rising rapidly. Again, the big orange bar there shows almost 80% that use of Linux in your organization will increase. Some will stay the same. Some are not sure. Some people, when they do a survey, are never sure of anything. And 1.4% will decrease the use. We talk in the office about what that person was actually thinking. Perhaps they prefer less secure software and they'd rather pay license fees. We really don't know. The tech job market itself. What this slide meant to represent is unemployment in the US was 8.3%. The tech sector fared somewhat better at 5.3% in 2011. The tech sector in 2012, unemployment 3.8%. Things are looking up. The job market is looking up in tech. It hasn't been an easy few years. I was in Mountain View yesterday. We have another organization that we're talking to, a not-for-profit organization that's getting into the evangelizing and training of big data and cloud technology with the sole purpose of trying to clarify what it really is. The industry itself has done a good job in making it pretty unclear as to what big data and cloud are. So we're hoping that we can start bringing more clarity to that. I guess what I'm saying is while I was there, I saw buildings going up, there was construction, there was a lot of activity. At the event that I was, everyone that was giving their presentation, Tom Siebel Systems was one of them. At the end, he was giving out his email saying, if you know anyone that knows Linux and open source is interested in working in big data, have them email this address. There's a demand now, and the demand is growing. I don't think there's been a better time. I mentioned about the open source careers toolkit. You've hopefully seen that there's a demand for your skills. There's certain things that I think will assist you in getting that interview at least. You got to get the job yourself at some point, but I think we can certainly help you in presenting yourself as a professional in Linux and open source. What you need. 4 things, what we say. Some education. That should be, at this point, you should be able to tick a box or be close to ticking a box that you're educated in some way. Getting experience, that's always been the challenge. Do you go into that first interview and say, well, I was hoping you guys would give me the experience, that's why I'm here. That's probably not going to work too well. Provable passion in Linux and open source. Some of you have shown that already. And an independent proof of your skill set. And as I said, you probably have the first one. It's the other ones that I want to explain a little bit more. Experience doesn't just happen. You have to pursue it. You have to make it happen. It's an individual choice, and you have to be motivated. It doesn't have to be the first paying gig that you have experience. You have organizations already in your life that you belong to, or guys that you hang out with, a group of peers, alumni. Oftentimes, there's a need for some kind of IT support, so you can volunteer with them. Set up an email, set up a calendar service. Everyone, at that point, a website. Practice some of the things that you've been playing around with in Linux and set up and stand up some of these services for them. That can go on your resume. You may still be in school. You may have recently graduated. If your institution has a computer lab or there are clubs at your school, they're often looking for volunteers. Doesn't pay necessarily, maybe some expenses, but that experience will go on your resume. Is anyone here already involved in one or more open source projects, contributing in some way? Got one guy, two, three people, four, so some. So open source projects, and there are many, and you go to olo.net, what's the other one, SourceForge, GitHub, find one that appeals to you. Find one that's something close to your heart that you'd like to work on and contribute to it. Ask some questions, get to know some people on the project and contribute. That doesn't mean just writing code. It can be writing documentation, and they'll list what they need help with. Does anyone have a second language here? So right away, they already need you because they need things to be translated. There's lots of work for translation. You're now involved in a project, and as your name becomes associated with projects, that's part of your profile. Right? You start to raise your profile. Someone searches your name, you have something concrete to go with it. Work on those projects can go on your resume. Demonstrate your passion. Well, you've done that by attending SouthEast LinuxFest. If you're writing a cover letter and you submit it, and I'm the HR manager, and you say, I love Linux and I love open source and I want a job with your company, let me work for you. The hiring manager is going to go to Google and they're going to search on your name. This is how it happens. And we talk to these people all the time. We talk to hiring organizations. We were at Netflix last month and we were talking to the chief architect, and he said, well, if anyone wants to work on our stuff, I just go and Google their name and see what projects they've worked on, what code they have up, and I'll look at it, and if it's good code, they'll probably work for Netflix. If it's not, they won't. And that's how it's happening now. If you say that you love Linux, and I Google your name, I want to see proof that that's the case. You have a blog, you have maybe photos of you here or at the booth. There's pictures taken of you volunteering, handing out snow cones for a project, whatever that is, wearing your project t-shirt. Those all go online, and that's how you'll be discovered. What will I find when I Google your name? Is this all that's there? That's okay. And if this picture's taken at the after party tonight, that's okay. Nothing wrong with that. But if that's all that's there, and I'm a hiring manager, I'm going to wonder. I might want to party with you after, but I think at least you're probably not going to get a job based on that alone. I want to see some of the other things that we talked about. I want to see your blog, your interaction at events, other projects that you've worked on. Okay. You need certifications. So I believe this, and our organization believes this. A college degree will set you up. A technical program will give you the baseline for your career for many years to come. But we're talking about becoming immediately employable with an organization. And so we say certification is an adapter that goes between your college degree and that job in the first interview, and connects the two together. An independent third-party metric. The skills need to be at a predictable level. And that is because HR managers, people doing the hiring, aren't always technical people. They have job requisitions that have been given to them from the chief technology officer, and they say, go find me 50 people that can do this. And then the HR person will go and they'll do their search, they'll go through channels, and they'll say, well, how do I know that the people out there can do what they say? Well, what we're seeing in North America recently, and it's been this way in the rest of the world for quite a while, but in North America, the certification is becoming that baseline. There's nothing else to go on. People in the past had many years of experience to fall back on. Not so much the case. There's more jobs that need to be filled than people out there who just have experience exist. So we're talking about those coming out of school, those without experience yet. That's where the certification gives the HR manager a chance to match you up to that job rec. That's how you're going to get the job. Grow with LPI. So I wanted to give a little bit about what we do, and I notice every time I say about or out that I'm giving away my nationality a little bit. LPI was started in Canada in 1999, and yeah, and I've only been in the US for about a year, and even though my kids already changed their accent so they didn't get beat up at school or whatever, I still have my accent with me. So we've given 350,000 exams since inception. More recently, we have well over 130,000 professionals worldwide now. Of those, and we have about 250,000 alumni attached to the organization right now. Not everyone has completed their certification yet. We have over 350 training partners around the world, and we manage those training partners through master affiliates, which we have in 27 regions around the world. Our exams have been translated by the community into 7 languages, and we attend close to 100 events a year, actually, like the SouthEast LinuxFest that we're at today. We are a community-based organization. In 1999, the community, some technology guys up in Toronto said, you know, hey, what if we had a Linux certification? I said, I don't know, let's find out. They sent out their email to the community list at the time, and the response was absolutely, let's do a vendor-neutral certification. Let's test it at the command line, and the overwhelming response was to do it. That's when they put it together. That community still builds the exams today. All of the job task analysis, all of the item writing and the item review is still done by the LPI community, and we have subject matter experts around the world that do that, as well as the translation of those items. So that community input resulted in the exam product showcase that we have today. You can see the different levels that are there, and all of this is available on our website, and a lot of this too, if you go to our booth that we have here and talk to Brooke, she'd be happy to explain to you in a little bit more detail. Wouldn't you, Brooke? No, she's leaving the room. Yeah, you would. Go back to the booth in case someone walks out right now. And we've just recently put out Linux Essentials, and the reason we did that, sorry, I'll go back, is the community for years has been asking for something that's a little more entry level. Our level 1 exams for LPIC 1 certification, they're difficult. You can't guess your way through the answers. You will need oftentimes a couple years work experience certainly helps. It's a tough exam. So if you're new to Linux and open source, that could have been a bit of a barrier. Linux Essentials was what we came up with, anywhere from 0 to 25% knowledge of Linux. You will receive a certificate. It's not a professional certification, but it's a starting point. And if you're new to Linux and open source, I would consider getting some information on that, because it's a gateway to a future career in Linux and open source. That's what we feel. I wanted to bring your attention to something else that we talk about CompTIA Linux Plus is our exam now. They're a partner of ours and have been since spring of 2010. They did have a certification. It was one test, and they had decided to drop that certification and just brand it with our existing level 1 certification. So this is important because if you start your certification path with CompTIA Linux Plus and you agree to have your exam results shared with LPI, then LPI will automatically award you at no extra charge the LPIC 1 certification. And in that certification packet, you will have a request form to fill out and send to SUSE, who will at no extra charge award you their CLA certification. So we went together with these two particular partners to do this and say 3 certifications for the price of 1. This is important in the context here because we're building a resume, and this allows you to put 3 certifications on your resume, and that's quite likely that's 2 more than many other people might have on their resume. That's an advantage, and you're looking for every advantage you can for that first interview and for that first job. I put this up as I talked about the Linux Essentials. It is in the process of being put into many technical schools and community colleges. The Linux Essentials program is being adapted into their IT programs now, and a requirement of that program will be them taking the test. And this will finally put Linux and open source as an option in the school curriculum, and that's a big change. That's something that anyone involved in Linux and open source would have liked to see many years ago. So you get to people a little bit younger before they're embedded in whatever proprietary software they might already be using and trained on. This is another option. So if we say, hey, there's Linux and open source options out there, have a look. That's important for all of us. I want to say again, you've seen the demand for Linux and open source professionals. You know that the job market is growing. The job market is paying more for Linux professionals than non-Linux professionals. That's seen, and it's paying more for certified professionals, clearly, so that the baseline can be established and they can eliminate the unknown of basing it on experience alone. But you have to do it. You have to take charge of your career. If you want to work in something that you're passionate about for whatever reason and get paid to play on Linux or Linux servers, that's absolutely possible. You're going to need to do some things to make that happen. I appreciate your time. I try to go through these, fairly quickly, get a bit of time back to you, but appreciate you coming in. If you have any questions, I will take them now. Yes, sir.
Could you give any numbers or estimates of LPIC certified folks worldwide or in the U.S. and maybe versus the Microsoft stuff?
Yes, I can. I don't know offhand how many Microsoft certified people there are. Maybe there's people here that have that certification. And at LPI, We have to be really careful about, you know, how we talk about other certifications. All IT certifications are important. Some IT certifications are very product specific, and we don't feel, hiring managers necessarily don't feel always give the best case. Now, there are, I would say, Microsoft certification, they may have the highest number of certified people in the world. Why? I'll tell you, it's maybe not as difficult as some of the other IT certifications, either the LPIC certifications or some of the other Linux vendor certifications. As a breakdown for LPIC certifications, I would say the rest of the world versus North America, 90% to 10%, maybe more. We certify thousands of Japanese professionals on a monthly basis. It's a promotion requirement in that country. Japan is our biggest market. Central Europe is next. Latin America, Brazil is third. There's always been a culture in North America of, well, I have the experience, and not just for LPIC certification, for any IT certification. I've had that talk with probably 100 people, and people in my organization have had that talk with hundreds more about the value of an IT certification. And the rest of the world has been certifying for a decade and a half. Now, in North America, in the past year and a half, we're seeing that change drastically, because the jobs are there, and there's supply has not kept up with demand. So, yeah.
I was wondering, since the demand for Linux Pros is so big right now, if you have experience with Linux but no certification, would a lot of companies hire you anyway and then pay for your certification?
It's possible. I mean, you have to sell yourself that way. I would never. You got to try, right? It certainly coming in certified wouldn't hurt. What we've seen and this is again a North America statistic, companies here do not seem to like to pay for certification or education. They want you coming ready to play on day one. And what that could have been the economy the last 10 years, I can't say, but it's likely that U.S. companies, for whatever reason, just expect you to come prepared. And I don't know if the budgets are there to pay for certification. Some smaller companies maybe have a better chance because there's less layers of approval to go through. Yes, sir.
What job description are your tests geared for? More specific than Linux professional.
So, and I would encourage all of you to go on the website. There's a lot more detail. But I can say that predominantly level 1 is geared to system administrator. And I think I have, so level 1, junior level, 1 to 2 years work experience and working on servers and a small site experience. And then you can see going up the levels up to level 3, and then the level 3 electives, your enterprise-wide and 3+ years work experience. All of the exam objectives are on the website. You can actually see what content it's covering at that point.
So you're for sysadmins?
Certainly the level 1 is geared to a sysadmin, yeah. There's a lot more content on there, but it had its inception in sysadmin. I don't think that's necessarily the case anymore, and I don't know the objectives offhand, and I probably couldn't get 3 questions right out of the 60 myself. I'm just admitting, I'm not a technical guy. I might get 3 on the Linux Essentials. I specifically have not looked at the test because I want to actually try to take that at some point. Anyone? Yes, sir. Black t-shirt.
As somebody who was recently unemployed
That's right. And I was talking with someone else who earlier who said that in where they lived, there was assistance, unemployment programs. I think it was geared to any CompTIA certifications. So there are ways, depending on your situation, to get assistance towards that certification. And that's the time, certainly that's the time to do it if you have extra time on your hands. Although I'm sure Halo is a lot of fun. Yes?
How do you determine, especially on the higher level tests, on the enterprise level, what, I guess, your customers, or I would say the other way, the hiring people want on the test? How does it match up?
Well, for the higher levels, and we did a lot of the work on the higher levels came from Japan. And in Japan, we have involved in the organization there all of the big companies, Hitachi, Fujitsu, NEC, all have seats on our advisory committee in Japan. And so those often are hiring managers as well as technical people. And so they determine the initial job tasks that we then build the objectives on and then put the questions towards.
That's interesting, because I guess it's a little different when you think about the job of a sysadmin in Japan versus North America. There are some similarities, but there's also significant cultural differences.
Significant cultural differences, yes. Did everyone else hear the question that he was asking? Okay. So just talking about sysadmins are sysadmins everywhere, but there's some cultures, and Japan is one of them, where there's a lot of value put into where you stand, if you're certified, and what job level that then gets you to. The other part of the question was just where do we get the information to build the tests, and that was why I was talking about those organizations in Japan as an example that supply that information from the jobs, so we know what to work towards. Over here.
So is the test all just multiple choice or essay?
The tests are multiple choice and fill in the blank. They are obviously put through rigorous psychometric testing prior to, and there are items, new items on the test all the time that are beta items. You wouldn't know in taking them, and the items are weighted as well to each objective in a certain way, so that I believe a cut score passes 500 out of 800. And that's as detailed as I understand the testing process itself.
Have you ever thought of actually having them at a keyboard and fixing a real Linux system, not a virtual system?
Yeah, we have thought about that, and there are other tests that do that. And the challenge is, first of all, cost to deliver a test like that. So, although there are some technologies that we're looking at that will allow study simulations to do that, rolling that out worldwide as a test itself has limitations. As a not-for-profit institute, remember, we're also engaged in bringing our test to developing countries. That's why we have affiliates in East Africa and parts of Asia and parts of Latin America, where sometimes the internet connection is even a problem, in which case we're bringing a paper test still to those people. It's not as many as it was, but it does still happen, because our core belief is that a global standard in Linux should be anywhere, and it should allow that person, regardless of their economic situation, to still compete, for those jobs remotely. Absolutely. Yeah.
How often are these tests administered?
Well, they're administered every day in a sense, because they're available in the View testing center. So you can go and take a CBT at View. You schedule ahead of time. We also hold the paper test here at these events at a cut rate. Hurts me to say, but yes, you can take the test at a significantly, deeply discounted rate but only while you're here tomorrow. Yes?
Now, LPI, it just does the test for the certification, it doesn't actually give you, like you don't have any classes or anything like to train for the certification?
Yes, and that's on purpose. And we do have approved training partners, which simply says that we have LPIC approved people training. But to be a truly vendor independent objective certification, we can't really be involved in the training, because then you could really just be training to the test, and that takes away credibility. So we've always said since inception, we will test you, we will certify you, but we won't specifically train you. We can mentor you, we can provide information, and we can direct you to training partners and all kinds of content. On our website, there's a marketplace available. It's not our content, but it's anyone who publishes to our test objectives, and all the major publishers do. You can get that content online through our marketplace. That's not our content, then that's not a revenue generator for us, but it is there.
Do most tech schools have Linux programs now?
More and more now they do, yes. And there's initiatives happening. Right now, we have things happening to bring the community college sector on board. We have another partner who's just finishing hands-on Linux labs, like the other gentleman had questioned. So that's going to be available at the community college for their students to go in and set up virtual servers, work on them, fix them, break them in a lab environment. That will happen in the college course itself and prepare them for taking the tests afterwards. All right, well, I have no more 5-hour energy left to give out. So. Any other questions? It's supposed to last for 5 hours, the energy that is, not the talk. I got 4 hours to burn. So I'll be at the booth for a little while. I'll hang out here for a little while, and lots of information online. And I'll stop now. I won't point out that people are yawning, because that's allowed. All right, how do we finish this off? I'll just stop talking.
Cloud stacks are everywhere.
This is the way to better utilize all your resources, and it makes managing all your resources pretty easy.
All of the innovation is happening in open source. The collaborative nature and of the community, and the speed at which these deficiencies, these bugs are getting discovered and fixed is a thing that really shows the power of the open source community.
It is global, and it's definitely because of the users.
Community people are extremely friendly and always ready to help.
If you go onto IRC any day, you'll see these guys helping each other out, and they're all doing it like in a selfless manner.
The product is transparent for everyone. Everyone can look at the code base. Everyone can see how Cloud Stack is being built. Nothing is proprietary. Everything is open.
In many ways, it's absolutely vital to the ongoing health of Cloud Stack.
The most exciting event in recent memory for me was our first developer boot camp. And our call gave people, I think, maybe 2 weeks notice to come attend. I was expecting 25 or 30 people. So we ended up with 87 people and had to go get more chairs into the room twice.
Everything within cloud computing is commodity and is open source. And so I don't think that you will you'll see anywhere where open source is not pervasive in cloud computing. And so I think it's an assumption. I think when you talk about cloud computing, you're really talking about open source cloud computing.
CloudStack is a robust solution for large deployments.
You have dozens of data centers and thousands of servers in each data center. These hardware is going to fail, and CloudStack is designed to handle, number one, that mass scale. Number two, it's designed to handle the failure that inevitably happens in large deployments.
We started working on CloudStack over 4 years ago, and it was the original set of people working on it had a background of delivering software to telcos and service providers.
Lots of QA, lots of users actually using it.
High availability is the key feature. Multiple hypervisor support, different network models. You can pick up whatever suits you better.
CloudStack management server can be deployed in different physical machines.
It definitely has a huge footprint. It's being deployed everywhere.
There's a major movie studio that they were using CloudStack. They were using it to transcode video, and I thought that was terribly fascinating. What I found more fascinating is what they did during lunch, where they would spin up 50 or 60 game servers. Then as soon as lunch was over, they would destroy all the instances and go back to doing real work.
CloudStack is vast. It touches so many different aspects, and there's no one person that's kind of like a master of all those realms.
I think CloudStack as a project is going to be one of the leaders, simply because it's some of the most featureful and robust platforms out there.
I don't see any limits to the CloudStack.
Most enterprises today realize that usernames and passwords alone aren't enough to keep their network safe from unauthorized intrusions. That's why two-factor authentication has gotten so popular lately. It adds that extra layer of protection enterprise networks need to stay safe. But what you may not know is that some two-factor authentication solutions, they're better than others, like two-factor strong authentication with Wicked. Wicked goes beyond other authentication systems by being less expensive, easier to implement, and easier to use, giving you software-based token clients built to run on all major devices and OSs, including iOS and Android. These tokens utilize a public-private key combination that's generated on device, so there aren't any shared secrets flying around for attackers to hijack, or which require any special handling. Instead, all keys are kept secure and private between the requesting token and your server, which you control in-house, making it the most secure way possible to perform authentication encryption. And with an extensive, flexible API and support for protocols like LDAP and Radius, Wicked works with any enterprise network architecture to protect the IT systems vital to your enterprise. Download your Wicked free trial today, regardless of whether you're considering two-factor authentication for the first time or just ready to ditch your existing expensive key fob system. We can help with easy-to-implement, easy-to-use, strong authentication. From Wicked.
When we created Asterisk over a decade ago, we could not have imagined that Asterisk would not only become the most widely adopted open source communication software on the planet, but that it would impact the entire industry in the way that it has. Today, Asterisk has found its way into more than 170 countries and virtually every Fortune 1000 company.
The success of Asterisk has enabled a transition of power from the hands of the traditional proprietary phone vendors into the hands of the users and administrators of phone systems. Using this power, our customers have created all sorts of business-changing applications, from small office phone systems to mission-critical call centers to international carrier networks. In fact, there's even an entire country whose communications infrastructure runs on Asterisk.
Digium has always been about creating technology that expands communications capabilities in ways that we could never have imagined. And that's part of what's game-changing about Digium. Today, we're doing it again, this time by introducing a new family of HD IP phones that extends control of the user all the way to the desktop.
The launch of these new products represents the next phase in Digium's history of innovation. These are the first and only IP phones designed to fully leverage the power of Asterisk. When we first discussed our expectations for building a family of phones for use with Asterisk, our requirements were pretty simple. We asked the team to build the phones such that they were easy to install, integrate, provision, and use. I think you'll soon agree our engineers have delivered on that goal. User feedback is validating that when it comes to operation with Asterisk-based systems, including our own SwitchVox-based product, these are the easiest to use, best integrated, most interoperable products on the market today. The Digium family of phones will initially include 3 IP desk phones, uniquely designed to complement any Asterisk or SwitchVox-based solution. These phones are different for a number of reasons. First, they're exclusively designed for use with Asterisk. Secondly, we've made it really easy to auto-discover and provision the phones. Next, we've made it easy for the phones to access information inside of Asterisk, allowing tight coupling between an application and the phone. Additionally, we've created an applications engine that allows users and developers to create and run their own apps on the phone. And finally, we've done all of this at a very compelling price point. At Digium, we're always thinking of ways to give our customers the best value in business phone systems and also give them the power to create their own solutions for any communications challenge.
We'll continue to push the boundaries, not only to make Asterisk cooler, faster, and more technologically feature-rich, but to make Asterisk and VoIP communications even easier.
And together, we'll change the way the world communicates.
Again.
Your customers rely on your website or application. If it's slow or non-responsive, it infuriates your users and costs you money. Keeping your business-critical systems humming along requires insight into what they're doing. Your system metrics tell stories that can reveal performance bottlenecks, resource limitations, and other problems. But how do you keep an eye on all of your system's performance metrics in real time and record this data for later analysis? Enter Longview, the new way to see what's really going on under the hood. The Longview dashboard lets you visualize the status of all your systems, providing you with a bird's-eye view of your entire fleet. You can sort by CPU, memory, swap, processes load, and network usage. Click a specific system to access its individual dashboard, then click and drag to zoom in on choke points and get more detail. Comprehensive network data, including inbound and outbound traffic, is available on the Network tab, and disk writes and free space on the Disks tab, while the Process Explorer displays usage statistics for individual processes. The System Info tab shows listening services, active connections, and available updates. Adding Longview to a system is easy. Just click the button, copy the one-line installation command, then run the command on your Linux system to complete the process. The agent will begin collecting data and sending it to Longview. Then the graphs start rolling. Use Longview to gain visibility into your servers, so when your website or app heats up, it stays up.